Hey guys, are you living your best life? Well, our guest today is here to share how we all have the power to create the life that we've always desired. She is a licensed acupuncturist, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and a spiritual coach. She's known as the goddess of gratitude. Welcome to the show, Shilamida.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Here's what I did. First of all, guys, if you're not watching this and you're listening, this is the first time I'm mic'd up that my guest is actually sitting on the floor for an interview. I love it. Very comfortable, though. This is very much, you're a very spiritual person. And our first conversation we had off camera, I wish that was recorded because it was so good. But I just get this great feeling. And that's why I was so excited to do this interview with you today.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we only have about 45 minutes, but I know you and I could probably talk for hours and just
Hours.
about especially your story. And here's the thing, I left your intro a lot shorter than what I usually do because I really want it to be more conversational, and your story has so many different elements to it. I didn't want to like almost reveal it in the bio.
Okay.
So obviously licensed acupuncturist, best-selling author, keynote speaker, spiritual coach. You have so much going on. But for someone to really understand and appreciate where you're at today, and as we record this, we're in the craziness of 2020
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of September. And so people can check you out first, and then I'm going to have you share your story. But they
Cool.
can go right on Instagram. It's goddess_of_gratitude. Website is shilamida.com. Keeps it nice and simple.
Easy. Yep.
And if you guys know anything about Mic'd Up, you guys know that I love to be great and be grateful. So can you imagine getting Mike DiCioccio, be great, be grateful? I say it every day, all the time on my show. And here we have the goddess of gratitude. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
So again, shout out to Autumn Joy Jackson. She's a friend of mine, and she saw some of your content. I think it was right on Facebook, and she said, this is someone who would be a tremendous guest on the show. And I did a little bit of homework and research, and I said, can you make that happen? Can you connect the two of us? And here we are. And that's why I love doing these interviews. You never know who you're going to meet every day.
Yeah, we're definitely connected, you and I. We're vibing very high on our first conversation, and I'm very grateful to Autumn for connecting us. And gratitude is key, right? And the more that we can share that with the world, the better place this world will be to live.
And I'm glad you said it. We're going to talk about, it's an awesome shout out I want to give you for 31 Days of Gratitude. It's your book. It's an interactive book. We're going to really dive deep into that. I know you're number one in 3 different categories. There it is, guys. You can see it if you're watching this, of course. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes. Incredible value in that guide. There's value right on her website that she gives away, and some free value on YouTube as well. But before we talk about gratitude, I feel like we need to hear that adversity that you were dealt with, because you were not someone who always woke up in a state of gratitude. It took
No.
years of learning. It took getting knocked on your can a few times, many times. I'm just going to share a couple things. I know, your father was diagnosed with cancer when you were 17, right? And your
Yep.
mother was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 different times. You were taking
Yep.
care of your sick parents as a young adult. You have a beautiful son that came into the world shortly after you broke up with your boyfriend. You just had all this craziness going on, and it's easy to kind of roll over in defeat and say, like, it just, things aren't going to come together for me.
Yep.
And I know you felt that. So why don't you start us back as far back as you want to go, and really let everybody who's tuning in right now know who you are and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, so how you said it, my dad got diagnosed with leukemia when I was 17. The phone call that came in to tell me that story told me that it was my fault that he had cancer. And as like a regular human being, I knew that that wasn't possible, but still those words being said to me kind of stuck with me.
Who
And
said
I
that to you? Who said that to you?
Oh, that mom of mine.
Oh no.
We love her and we've done some healing since then. But, she
Yeah.
was sad and angry, and it was easy for her to pin that off on me. And because when we hear the word cancer, it's like a death sentence, at least for most people. And
Mhm.
most people don't know how to deal with that. And so we didn't know how to deal with that either. So I spent years doing drugs, alcohol, having sex, shopping. I mean, you name it, to try to cover my pain and help me with my anger. And I just couldn't find anything. And when I was about 23 years old, I was sitting in my room. I had roommates, and I came across this website, Kabbalah.com. And on the first page of Kabbalah.com, this is going back like 14, 15 years now. Oh, even more. I was 23, so like 17 years. So this is
Mhm.
before the craze of Kabbalah. And one of the first sentences said, do you not feel like everybody else? Do you feel like you've lived this life before and you just don't fit in? And with every sentence I read, I was like, wow. And so I ended up going into New York City to a Kabbalah. It was like an event that they were having for some holiday. And I absolutely loved it. We did this meditation, and I just loved the energy of the people that I was with. And I decided to sign up for classes. And that set me up on my spiritual journey. So when I was about 23 years old, I started really studying Kabbalah. I started reading books from Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and just any bit of spiritual knowledge that I could grab onto, I was holding on to. And what I was learning from every single thing that I was learning was that you really need to show up every day with the intention of being the best person that you could be. And no matter which thing that I was reading, every single common denominator went back to gratitude, right? If it was Kabbalah, it was about gratitude and appreciation. If it was Buddha, it was about gratitude and appreciation. So I kept getting this one message every single place that I was learning. And when I was about 26 years old, my dad passed away. When he was diagnosed, he was given 2 years. He ended up living 9. Um, and 3 months after he passed away, I broke up with my boyfriend. And 6 weeks later, I found out I was 8 weeks pregnant with his child.
Mhm.
So that sent me for a whirlwind. I mean, just the fact that my dad passed away was, one traumatic thing that happened. But then finding out that I was pregnant was just horrifying. I came from a very traditional family where you're supposed to get married, then have
Right.
babies, then, it's supposed to go in an order. And it didn't happen that way for me. And with all the spirituality that I was doing, I was like, oh my God, what if this is my dad coming back in this form of a baby?
Mhm.
So I ended up having this baby, and I gained 100 pounds during that pregnancy. At my heaviest, I was 255, and I wasn't one of those girls that took that off right away. It took me several years to take the weight off. I
Mhm.
was miserable. I was negative. All I did was complain until my son was about 9 months old. I met a new girlfriend who came to my house, and after about an hour of us BSing back and forth, she turned around and she was like, you're a really negative person.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh,
Frying pan
I,
moment for you?
right? I was like, wow, like nobody's ever said that to me before. But
Yeah.
she was 100% right. I
Uh-huh.
mean, everything that came out of my mouth, I was complaining and I was negative. And you know what the funny thing is that most negative people don't even know that
Mhm.
they're negative, right? Because we're surrounded by people who love to hear us complain. People
Mhm.
don't want to hear your wins. People want to hear when you're doing bad because it
Yeah.
makes them feel better, right? My
Uh-huh.
son came in my bedroom last night. He's like, what are you watching? And I was, catching up on some reality show. And he was like, I don't understand why you watch that. And I said, you know what, Mikey? I get to escape from all of my problems when I get to watch other people's problems.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
true.
that's why
That's,
drama sells, right? I mean, drama
yeah,
sells. Reality TV is a bunch of people that we don't even know in drama. And I mean, some of it is real, some of it's fake, but it's like, yeah.
an
And
escape.
it's an escape, but I want to say, I feel like our cultures are very similar. So I'm 100% Italian.
Hmm.
We're very regimented and get together, get married first, then you can sleep under the same roof, then you can have children, have a big family. Your wife is supposed to stay at home,
Right.
work, be at home while you go out and work. And I did that whole thing. I did that. I got married when I was 25, had a beautiful family, beautiful daughter born a couple years into the marriage. And I ended up getting a divorce. It's a whole nother story for another podcast episode. But my point is I get that culture, and this isn't a knock because I love my family and I love the Italian culture I grew up in. But something that I feel we do is we have this negative thing where it's almost like you said, it's just kind of BSing, and it's just, this week was so rough, this, that, and the other thing. Sometimes we're just sitting there and I can hear a little bit of bickering with family members that are like, someone will walk by, oh my God, look at her pink shorts are too pink, or this car, look at this guy with the big car, he's got to show off. Like, he might not even be thinking that, And I think a lot of people that are listening to this can relate. And it's important for us to change, like, appreciate the environment you're in. A huge word that I want to make sure is properly used here is like, just understand it and realize it. And it's not saying you need to never talk to your family, but get around people who you help rise up, they rise you up, and you're resonating at the same level. And I think that's why you and I, when we connected the first time, I felt your energy because we were both like vibing, saying like, we're looking to go here. And something you already said that I'm excited to get back to is you mentioned be great, like go and do whatever it is that you're set out to do at the highest level you can achieve it. Right. And then the gratitude comes second. It's like, okay, now we're reflecting on the thing that I get to do every day, whether that's a baseball player loving to play the game of baseball, and they're grateful for that. And they're going to do it at the highest level they can. It could be a janitor. It could be a school teacher.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take too much of the floor here. I just want to make sure that I really hammered that through because it's super important. Your identity is not one of those key things that happened to you in your past. You push through it. And so it took that frying pan of a friend saying you're pretty negative. So
yeah.
pick it right back up there. So how did you what little things did you do every day to start to mindfully get past that?
Yeah, so awareness is key, right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to start listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth and the thoughts that are processing through your mind, right? Because your thoughts are your worst enemy. What people don't realize is that thought process, that little voice that's talking to you all day long, that little voice is actually manifesting all day long. It's creating for you. So if it's not positive, then it's attracting to you negative things all day long. So we talked about things like the law of attraction. We talked about The Secret, and I made all of my excuses as to why I didn't read the book or listen to the CD. And I had all the tools. It's funny.
Your friend was sharing this with you, the law of attraction. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite things to focus on is law of attraction, The Secret, and it's not really a secret anymore.
Right.
But still, how many people give it a couple days of interest and then they just go back to their negative ways, right?
Yeah, because it takes time and you really have to be connected in order to see it happen, right? It's like you're not really, The Secret tells you to start with a parking spot. So it's like when you get your parking spot, that's awesome, and then you forget, right? But for me, in those times, at that 9-month marker, I was still with my ex. We broke up with my son was about 18 months old. So when I lived as a single mom, using gratitude as an actual tool to attract myself money to pay the rent, to attract myself food to feed my son, that was a very real thing. So when you're not in a place of like total desperation, you may just take that and be like, oh, that's just woo woo stuff. It doesn't really work. But then when you're living in it and you're dependent upon it, it's incredible what you could do with the power of gratitude. It really is like this magical power, and it's so simple, but it's a whole mindset shift and change. And as soon as that friend left, I went to my bedroom. I had a copy of that Law of Attraction book. I had that book for about 7 years sitting on my bookshelf. It had 0 pictures in it, so I never read it. I think I got to page 3. And after she left, I just dove in and I started reading it. And I ordered The Secret on DVD because I made every excuse why I couldn't read it, couldn't listen to it on CD. I started watching it, and it was the same thing. It was that gratitude message again, over and over again. So I'm like, okay, how do I get into this habit? So I bought a gratitude journal and I started writing in it. But the problem is my life was so miserable at that time that I really didn't know what to be grateful for, right? Like people will say to me now, well, look at your life. You have so much to be grateful for, but it didn't always start that way. I lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment. I was a massage therapist. I had to convert my dining room into a massage room. And when my 2-year-old would go to sleep at night, I would have people come into my house and I would massage them. And that's how I made my way through acupuncture school. So it's this whole process of saying yes to things in a time where you think that this can't happen or that's impossible. Or, I was thinking of this moment that I had with a family member of mine a few years ago. And we were sitting on my deck in my old house. And I was talking about how I wanted to buy a new house. And he was like, you just bought this house. Like, why would you buy a new house? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, I'm 46 and I'm thinking about retirement, but like not in a good way. It wasn't, like, oh, I have all this saved, so I'm going to retire now. It was my life is over and I'm about to give up kind of
Mhm.
thing. And I'm like, I'm about to buy a new house and I'm going to buy a house after that. And because for me, everything started so much later in life
Mhm.
because I had the kid first, right? And I didn't go to acupuncture school until I was 30. So I didn't start my career until I was almost 33 years old. I didn't buy my first house until I was 36 years old, So we go through life thinking that we have to get married, we have to buy a house, we have to do things in this order. And when we're not doing it in
Well, I
this
don't think these
order,
help either
we
too,
get
right?
ourselves, oh my
I was
gosh,
gonna say, like,
100%.
it's a comparison tool. Everyone's looking at what everyone else is doing around them. You can have these great things going on. I say you very general here. And you could be buying your first house, all this cool stuff, but then it's like you see what other people are doing and all of a sudden it's not good enough. And so I just wanted to add that. Yeah, it's totally like we feel we need to do things at particular times. I mean, I'm 34, going to be turning 35 at the beginning of the new year. And I kind of feel like I'm having like this midlife crisis already, but it's like, that's not supposed to happen until I'm 50. But I just have a number of things I want to achieve that I haven't done yet. And it's important to be patient and follow through on the daily things we need to do, right?
Patience, persistence, positivity. That's what my life partner says to me all the time. Patience, positivity, persistence. And if you live by those 3 P's, you will be okay. Because that was my biggest problem all those years ago, was that I was comparing my life to other people's lives. When I had my son, it was my 10-year high school reunion. And I'm like, why would I go? I'm so overweight. I'm in between businesses. I had just sold a business. Like, what am I going to talk to these people about? Like, I had nothing to talk to them about, right? And in the same token, I didn't think that I had anything to be grateful for. But what we don't realize is the fact that you're listening to this podcast or watching it right now on Wi-Fi, we are the richest people in the world. And take away the diamonds, take away everything. When I was in my broke season, I was richer than half of the people in this world. But I
Mhm.
didn't realize that because I was too busy looking at other people's lives, wondering why my life wasn't their life. And
Yeah.
then when I had that switch in mindset, and all of a sudden I stopped looking at them with envy and jealousy, and instead I started being happy for those people. And I'm like, hey, you're going to Turks and Caicos. Great. I'm grateful that I'm going to be in Turks and Caicos too. And hey, you just bought that great house with that backyard. I'm so grateful for my house and my backyard. And when I started that switch in mindset, that's when the whole switch started for me. And that's when I started attracting things. And that's when I started manifesting at a very high level, because all I did was change the mindset. It wasn't about what don't I have, it was about what do I have. I'm grateful for electricity, and I'm grateful for clean water, and I'm grateful for Wi-Fi, and I'm grateful that there's air conditioning inside, right? There's so many things to be grateful for. But if you go back to that first gratitude journal that I had, for pages, they're empty. If I wrote 3 sentences, I was lucky, which is why I created this book the way that it is, because on every single page, there's sample affirmations. So if you're having the most miserable day in the world, you can open this up and be like, today is going to be an amazing day. I mean, that's the first sentence on this page.
Yeah.
Today is a new day. I am grateful I am alive. I am grateful I slept in a bed last night. I am grateful for clean sheets. I mean, you're not grateful for clean sheets, right? The average person is not grateful, but
Yeah.
how good does it feel to get inside that clean bed on
Mhm.
cleaning day, right?
Right. Or not to have, some people are literally one of the people that I talked to recently that's going to be on my guest. We're kind of doing the pre-interview like you and I did. He was sharing a story about his family literally at a period of their time were living in huts and with insects and animals and all kinds of stuff. And they had to survive that to get to America. And here we are, it's easy to take things for granted. And I think the word gratitude for you and I is like so key. And a lot of people do focus on it. It seems like the more we're talking about law of attraction, which is funny, but the more I talk about it and think about it, I meet people like you, right? Isn't that funny how we connect? And that's like a key word for us. But I think, maybe the general person listening to this, which is cool, they haven't maybe spent that much time in gratitude. So I want to make sure we're not just saying what it is and explaining that the difference between just saying I'm grateful that the sky is blue and then I have clean sheets. I know what you're saying there, but it's actually feeling it. It's
Yeah.
feeling that amazing feeling you have when you do lay on clean sheets and you're like, okay, cool, nice. I got a fresh bed. You get into a bed that was made opposed to a bed that was disheveled all day long. It
Yeah.
has a different comfort to it. You just literally think like, wow, there's people that are like sleeping outside right now, in major popular cities in the US trying to make it through the pandemic. And I have a
Yeah.
roof over my head. And maybe it's not the favorite place you're living. Maybe you're in an apartment and you want a home, or you're, whatever the situation is, it's not where you want to be. But it's still super important to be grateful that you're in that moment. Something I learned too is some of the biggest lessons I've learned in life have come from some crazy adversity that I was dealt with. Talked about my divorce being one of them. And I always turn that into what great things did I learn about myself that I can improve on if a business doesn't work. I mean, the most successful people have failed way more than anyone has even
Oh,
tried.
yeah.
The
I've
biggest names in business have failed so many times, but no one wants to talk about that. But the only way they get there is like Michael Jordan taking a million shots so he can make 9,000 or whatever crazy amount of baskets he made because he wasn't afraid to keep going. Like if he missed, he was going to shoot just as confidently 3 seconds later, which is an amazing trait. And I learned that in entrepreneurship. When someone says no to you, I think, instead of getting mad, okay, what can I learn? Like, did I maybe not deliver that right? Did I not ask them enough good questions? Do I even know enough about them for them to say yes to me? Like, I take it, we are responsible for it. When you take your own responsibility, you can go and make adjustments. When you blame it on everything else in a negative way, it's like there's no adjustments to be made.
Yeah.
So when there's something bad that happens now, of course, I'm not like, if it's a medical thing or something really devastating, like the pandemic, I'm like, yay, the pandemic happened. Okay, well, what the heck can we learn from this moment? I think a lot more people connected with family.
Hmm.
I spent more time with my personal family members that are close to me physically, more time with my daughter. I learned more about myself and how thick my skin can be in business and things I needed to pivot. I know I want to hear more about what you learned through the quarantine and pandemic, but the point is there's really two different roads. There's the road of, oh man, this happened to me. So like kind of the old version of ourselves that would
Yeah.
have just went chirping and turning into drama. And there's the self-development and construction where it's like we're always under construction.
Yeah.
The lights are blinking, the under construction tape is out. And that's where you can really learn and grow and become great, is when you're actually developing on it. And so I'm excited to hear some of the ways. And now I do want to talk about your book, 31 Days of Gratitude, the journal you just held up. Can you share maybe a couple best practices that we can take away? Of course, they can purchase it right on your website, right?
On my website or on Amazon.
Okay.
And, to go back to the entrepreneur comment, I'm on my sixth business and I've owned three MLMs.
Okay.
So, and I can't say that my businesses were, this business that I'm in now is uber successful. But when I was 21 and I opened up my first business, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about anything. But I saw an opportunity and I knew that I didn't want to work for anybody else. And I went for it. And I put everything on my credit cards. And I have taken risks like that throughout my entire life sentence. Even going to acupuncture school was over a $50,000 investment when I was a single mom living on food stamps.
Mhm.
So, that was a great thing that you brought up, because I think people really need to know that the reason you become successful, or you're looking at these people with envy and jealousy, is because they took a risk.
Uh-huh.
I take risks all the time, especially since I've started working with mentors and coaches. I mean, I've invested over $100,000 in coaching and mentoring over the last 3-4 years. And it's like, every time I go to make the investment, I don't think I have the money, but the money that I end up spending always ends up making me more money. So
Mhm.
it's like, you have to just get yourself in this proper mindset of, I'm going to go for it. I'm alive today because I'm going to go for it.
Right.
And so during quarantine, I actually launched a new book. And the new book is called From Food Stamps to First Class.
Oh, I love that.
This book tells the stories that got to this book. So I started off with the gratitude journal many years ago because I wanted people to have a tool to work with who were in the same position as me, right? I used to have really bad anxiety, panic attacks. I was clinically depressed. And when somebody told me to be grateful, I really had a hard time with that gratitude piece. So when I went to go author my first book, I actually started a different book called The Magic of Gratitude, which is still sitting in my Dropbox somewhere. So I probably should go finish it. But then halfway through, I was like, no, I need to start with a tool so that when I'm having a conversation with someone and they want to call BS on what I'm talking about, I can be like, here, take this for the next 31 days. And if you fill this out every single day and you don't have a shift in your life, return it to me and I'll give you your money back. Because
Mhm.
that's how strongly I feel that this journal will help you that much to make a shift in your life, to start to change that mindset and to start appreciating wherever you are right now. And then twofold, it teaches you how to manifest and it teaches you how to create the life that you're living now. So that was one of my biggest issues too, is that I didn't really understand the fact that I was a co-creator of this life that we're living, right?
Amazing.
We're
Yeah.
co-creating,
Yeah.
right? So
So
everything
huge.
that's happening, it's not happening to you, you're actually creating it, right? So if you're looking, there was a beautiful quote that I saw the other day, and I'm going to botch it, but it said something to the effects of, if you've been asking for something and people are leaving your life, it's because those people can't help you get to the next level,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
serving.
so powerful. In 31 Days of Gratitude, I talk about reason, a season, and a lifetime. And in this book, I talk about how I had to let people go. And you touched upon it before, Mike, when you were saying how, family members around you, if they're negative and they're bringing you down and they're in that misery component. Well, I actually stopped going to family functions for a
Mhm.
while in the beginning of my spirituality. When I really started to understand what an up level was and knowing that I wanted to get myself out of where I was, I needed to disconnect from the people who were triggering me all the time. And who triggers you the most? It's like your mother, your brother, your husband, your wife, your children, right? So we
Right.
can't get rid of the kids. They have to stick around. We have to figure out how to work on those triggers. But you know what? Your mother, your brother, your uncle, your third cousin, you don't really need to talk to those people every day.
Mhm.
You can cut off communication with those people for a while until you work on healing yourself. And when you've healed yourself, you will be able to sit in a room with those people and have a conversation with them, right? If I would have told my family members that I was going to acupuncture school, they would have all talked me out of it. I went and signed up for a school that was over $50,000 full
Mhm.
time without talking to one family member about it because
Super important.
because
So important. Go ahead.
yeah. I knew that they were going to talk me out of it. I had just finished massage school that I had paid $8,000 or $9,000 for, and I was a serial entrepreneur. I went from one opportunity to another opportunity to another. So nobody would have ever been like, you know what, this is a good idea for you to go commit yourself to 50 grand to
Right.
go to acupuncture school when I didn't even know anything about acupuncture.
Mhm.
I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to play with needles today. Acupuncture found me. It was a part of the spiritual journey that I was on, and
Mhm.
I went for it. And here I am.
And it's an amazing story, and I'm learning from you as well. I'm going to get your gratitude journal because one of the things, and everyone who's tuning in, if you're tuning in multiple times, you know that I talk about gratitude every episode. We end every episode in gratitude, and I start and end my days with gratitude. And sometimes I even slip up and either forget in the morning or if I got something crazy going on, and I try to write it down on my journal. But my journal are blank pages, different than the book. And
Mhm.
so I am interested in having a journal like what you have, where it actually I can color it in essentially. There's the framework is there. And on a day when maybe I'm having a rough day or something, there's gonna be some ideas of things to think about for gratitude. And also I feel like if you have a dedicated book for something, just like if you're running on a treadmill, you have that dedicated space in your home to go get your workout in. Well, your journal is like your dedicated place for your gratitude. And
Mhm.
so for me, this is my dedicated place for notes, podcast notes, business notes. If someone calls me and I got to write a phone number down, and it gets mushed in there. And it's not like if you asked me to find three things I wrote down yesterday, I'd have to go dig. Where if I had a journal, I think that's a brilliant idea. Why the journal works is you can go and for a half hour meditate and be mindful in your gratitude because it's something you can hold in your hands. Love that idea. The other thing you just said, this is like another mic drop moment, as I say on the show. You talked about how a lot of times family, they love and care about us. They want us protected. And if we're doing something risky that we believe in, it's important for us to understand if they don't believe in it or are trying to pull us away from it. It's not necessarily someone trying to stomp on your dream as much as it might be mom saying, I don't want to see my son or daughter go through adverse times because they know that entrepreneurship is the rockiest ship you can hop into. But when you know in your heart and you're called by the spirits that you listen to, whether that's God or the universe, I think it's all connected personally. I felt called to do this podcast. I'm not making any money doing my podcast yet, but I'm doing it because I love connecting with people like yourself. I've had numerous family members tell me not to do this because they think I need to focus on other things that make money, which I understand they're trying to help me. But I've made money off of things that have come from this show that are not the primary reason I'm doing this.
Right.
Second point I want to make is if you said you were going to law school and spent 100 grand, that in this country is like commended. Like, oh, she went to a great school. She's going to Yale. She's going to this school. She's going there. And all of a sudden it's like justified that you spent 100 grand and you're 23 years old then and people are freaking out. But that's like a normal thing that's accepted because they're like, oh, she went and tried to do this better thing for herself. But if you said I'm starting a massage school and I just spent 20 grand in equipment and on research videos and stuff, people are like, you're freaking crazy is the first
Right.
thing out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't know if I have the answer, but I just want people who are listening to understand that if you have that thing in your heart, the reason I'm doing this show is to inspire people to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. So if you can talk to that person right now, what message would you deliver to them? They're ready to start their dream. They're stuck. Their family's kind of trying to talk them out of it. What would you say to that person?
First thing I would say is definitely buy From Food Stamps to First Class. We talk about this a lot in this book. Chapter 1 is all about judgments and opinions, and that starts from your parents with children, right? Especially now we're living in an age of helicopter parents and attachment parenting, and we're like literally the adult is taking over the child's life, right? But what we need to remember is when we come into this world, we come into this world with our own purpose. Our mother and our father provided us a canal to come in through, and they are supposed to provide us with the guidance that we need to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So that means not your mom's dream, not your dad's dream, not your brother's dream. It's got to be your dream. And your dream may not come to you for a very long time. So that's what we need to keep remembering and reminding ourselves is that all of these family members who are telling you, no, that's not a good idea, no, that's not this, no, that's not that, they're not as brave as you are. And they don't have the oomph that you have, right? My family members are completely different than I am. This is, I'm the one that's a risk taker because money for me is energy, right? So
Mhm.
I understand at this point in life that money is energy. And as long as I keep spending that money and I keep being grateful for the money, and I keep using the money in a positive way, that money is always going to show up for me. So if I want to spend, $10,000 on a Kundalini certification that I'm doing right now, I'm going to spend that 10,000 because that 10,000 is going to multiply back. And if I want to spend 30,000 on a mastermind that's going to help advance me in life, then I know that that money is going to return to me. So you have to go into things knowing, right? Like just you go to college because you want to learn a skill set that you're then going to use to produce you more money,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But we've been conditioned for that our entire lives, right? So you're conditioned just like you got to get married, got to get a white house with a picket fence, you got to have children. Well, you got to graduate high school, you got to get into a good college, you got to do it, right? You got to do it all these steps.
Yeah.
But in this Corona hell, as I call it, experience, those first couple of weeks of homeschool, my 6-year-old turned around to me and said, Mommy, I'm going to own 4 businesses. And the first one I'm going to own by the time I'm 20. And I turned around to my boyfriend and I said, this is the best homeschooling experience ever because we're teaching them, mommy and daddy are both bosses. Mommy and daddy both own their own businesses. They're seeing things in a very different way. Just because they teach you in school to do things X, Y, Z doesn't mean that that's the right thing. I'm grateful in knowing that I'm controlling the content of what my children are going to be learning because what I've learned with my older son, who's now 13, and watching what he learned in the school systems and the public school systems in the last couple of years, half the time I'm like, why are you even learning that? Like last year, they had to memorize the map of China. I mean, I don't know where else in your life ever will you need to memorize the map of China or know that information. Right. So now I'm realizing that a lot of the stuff in the public school system, it's a lot of fluff and it's a lot of red tape and it's a lot of politics. And we don't even realize that and know that. And so we've talked about homeschooling for years in my house, but we're both entrepreneurs. I would have never just pulled them out of that free daycare from 8:30 to 3 o'clock or whatever to do it on my own. But I'm so grateful that this happened the way that it did because now I get to really control how life happens in my household. And that's a wonderful thing. But to have the balls to do that, I talk to people all day long who don't want to send their kids to school, who don't want their kids wearing masks, who don't want. And then the next day you're seeing them with mask photos on the first day of school. Because we've been conditioned to do what everybody else is doing. We're scared. And that fear, our entire country, the entire world is operating from a place of fear right now. And what I've learned in this life is that any given moment, we have a choice between fear and love. That's it. It's fear or it's love. So if you're not scared, then that means that you're living in love. So when you feel like you're so scared and you're so anxious and you're so panicked, and then you bring gratitude in, well, I'm grateful that I'm alive. And I'm grateful that my children are healthy. And I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do this homeschooling. And I'm grateful that I'm going to teach them more than the school is going to teach, and you just shift the language. It changes everything. So it's fear or it's love. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing in between.
Yeah, we were just talking about this on the Sunday's message. My pastor was talking about how right now he was talking about have balls. I mean, he came out and was talking about a whole message on politics, not one side or the other, but just that we're in a state right now preparing for this election, that there's so much division in the world. And he was like trying to make people remember that it's important, like to have unity through it. And then it's okay if someone has a different opinion than you, like get back to the respectful, like we all need to treat each other in love no matter what. Like we're human beings, love each other as humans, and stop with the guy's wearing a hat you don't like the words on it or something. Like, okay, they made a decision there, but it doesn't mean you don't love them as a person. And you see all this, like people go directly to hate. I mean, it's in sports, you got to hate the other fans, the other team, and all kinds of crazy stuff. But something again that you hit on another amazing point that I love to talk about, and I'd like you to share more on, is talking about school, right? So we learn all this general knowledge, the map of China, things that Now, if you're teaching that, maybe you're teaching, you know, the history of China in in a specialized class, or someone's going over there to study and they need to learn it, totally cool. If someone wants to be an auto mechanic, how much time do you learn how to do that? If they want to learn how to balance a checkbook, that's not really taught in public schools either. Like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not really even considered or talked about. It's like this taboo thing. So
Mhm.
my point is, I'm not shooting the education system down. I think it's totally important, obviously, that we're an educated population of people on this planet. Education is super important, and I believe in it. But I do feel that senior to kind of general knowledge is specialized knowledge, where if somebody does want to learn business, they go and learn business school, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like the college mentality. You go and you pick a specialty that you're going to go learn for 4 years and you get your master's in that thing, right? Or your bachelor's. So why there's not really specialized knowledge as much in high school, like where you can kind of pick a thing and learn more about it. It doesn't happen until you're like almost 20 years old.
Right.
Then at that point it's so costly that you're kind of afraid to change. Some people go and their parents talk them into finishing strong, just go through it. They're afraid to change. I'm grateful now I was able to change halfway through my freshman year. I went for elementary education because I had this moment in high school where a teacher just really helped me learn in ninth grade math. And I felt, oh my God, why am I 15 years old and finally coming to the realization that I'm not an idiot? I can learn this because the teacher helped me apply what I'm capable of. So I wanted to do that at a young age and do that in like second grade math, right? So I went for that, but I realized halfway through the year, it wasn't my true calling for 30 years plus
Right.
career. And I had a conversation about loving to do media production, that kind of thing, video, audio. And the person I was talking to, my advisor, points through the window and says, "See that building over there? That's a media productions building. Like, how come you're not over there?" I didn't even know it existed. And so I got on my right path, right? So we can easily get off of it. That whole rant is just basically how important specialized knowledge is. We have about 6 minutes left. Can you talk about that?
It's so important. One of the things that I wrote on my first vision board all those years ago was that I would like to present a class to the schools, like a basic skills of life. I
Mm.
mean, people, I didn't know when I went to college. And I remember before my dad passed away, he wanted to have these conversations and they were so uncomfortable. But balancing a checkbook, like you said, changing a light bulb, changing your car tire, knowing that you have to change your oil in your car. It's like you would think and hope that mom and dad are teaching these things. But, I grew up as a latchkey kid. My parents were working in New York City every day until 7, 8 p.m. at night until my dad shifted his schedule. But we really, a lot of what they're trying to teach now in the schools is about sex and sexual education. And this, I have a very big problem with some of the mandates and the laws that they're passing. And what people keep saying to me is, but you don't understand. In these schools, they don't have parents that talk to them about sex and masturbation and all of these things. And I'm like, but that's not really appropriate to be taught to a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, or some of the stuff that they want to teach in the middle schools. Like, why don't we go back to the basics of how we
Yeah.
actually live life and teach the kids that stuff and leave the sexual stuff to when they get a little bit older or in a different way. But with my 13-year-old, that's what I've really been pushing him on the last couple of weeks is, listen, we really need to find what you're good at and we need to develop that, because he's not the studious type. So for him to be sitting in front of a computer now, he has chosen to do virtual learning through the public schools, and I see him struggling, and it's only been a week.
Mhm.
And, I keep telling him, look, like, let's figure out what you're good at and let's work on developing that, because
Mhm.
you don't, in my house, you don't have to do it the traditional way, because
Mhm.
I'm trying to break free away from the traditional way.
Yeah.
Because as we can see in the world that we're living in right now, there really is no right and wrong.
Yeah.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
It's so important though to be have superpowers in one particular thing too. You learn it in business to niche
Mhm.
down. One of the things I learned from reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about early on in the book. He talks about Henry Ford and how one of the things that he figured out that was brilliant in business at the time was he knew what he was really good at and he knew what he was really poor at. And so he had other people do his accounting and bring him in, and he specialized in figuring out what he wanted to do with building a motor for a vehicle, right? In the assembly line and everything. And so he brought people in that were specialists in those other things. So I'm not saying, again, it would be important. Is that Mikey who's 13?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously for him to get at that age, kind of a well-rounded education and then find what he wants to specialize in. But at the same time, it's okay. Like if he's not maybe the greatest at accounting or he doesn't like numbers, he can still run a business and hate numbers because eventually you'll have someone that's your accounting person. So
Well, so that's me. That's how I run a business. I hate numbers. Until
Yeah.
recently, I realized that I really had to know my numbers in order to scale my business. But
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I teach to my clients, Mike, is you have to create a do not do list. And on that list, you have to create a list of every single thing that you do in a day. I mean, everything. Go to the dry cleaner, go to the supermarket. And then off of that list, I want you to create a second list of the things that you don't like to do on that list. So I will tell you right now, I hate making beds. It is like the worst thing in the world for me if you want me to make a bed. If you handed me $1 million, I could not make you a hospital corner for the life of me, right? And I also despise washing dishes and doing laundry. So I have now hired out people in order to do those things for me because I know that my worth in an hour is worth more than me paying somebody else to do the things that don't fuel my fire, right?
Right.
So if I'm standing in the laundry room all day long cursing at the laundry, then what am I doing? I'm manifesting more negativity. So now you're going to tell me, well, I don't have the money to do that. But if you want to scale in your life, it takes money to scale. It doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes the mindset of knowing if you can go make $20 an hour, then you can take 8 to 10 of that to pay somebody else to do a task that you really dislike doing. Because in that time, if you can feed yourself with joy or happiness or do something productive, you're going to make more money to keep paying the people to do the things that you don't enjoy doing. It's a
Amazing.
beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
That one of my favorite apps, and this is a free promo here, maybe they could become a sponsor, is Instacart.
Oh, I love
Going
Instacart.
to the great grocery store, I get lost in there every time. I feel like every time I learn where something is, they change it to a different end cap. I could spend 3 hours in there when someone could do it in 15 minutes. That's not even an exaggeration. I had
100%.
someone that I used to work with. I was down in Florida for 2 weeks of training, and I was at the grocery store with a couple women that were in my group. They're laughing at me. I'm here picking out salsa. They're literally like, "You are the most difficult human in the world. What's taking you so long with salsa?" I'm reading the back of the thing. If I had it on my phone, I would have just typed in like mild salsa, the brand I want, and it's done in 5 seconds. And I'm over here looking at, because there's 97 options. This is too
Right.
much for me to look at, and I'm too analytical. So Instacart, I shop for the week in 10 minutes, and it gets delivered to my house. And I know I'm paying way more than I'm supposed to, but I'm also not wasting 3 hours of my week where I can create content and everything else. It's now we're at the hour here. I have to jump on to another meeting, but what I'd like to do, I'm going to have one last moment for you to talk about 3 things that you are most grateful for, and then we can continue the conversation after this interview. And thank you so much for being here today. But what are your your top 3 things today that you're grateful for?
I'm really grateful for my children. My kids have completely shifted my entire life for me. I wouldn't be who I am right now if it wasn't for them. I am super grateful for my lover and my soulmate. I mean, he just supports me like no other. And I just love the relationship that we have. And I am so grateful for traveling and being able to do that freely and wanting to be on an airplane every month again. So I'm manifesting that.
That's
And I'm grateful for you and having me on your show today.
I'm grateful for this time today and your friendship. Guys, you can check Shilamida, Shilamida.com. And if you're on Instagram, you got to check out her content. It's great. If you're looking for that daily inspiration or just that spark, if you're having a bad moment, go check her, look at her Instagram, because there's a ton of resources on there, right on your website as well. Shilamida, thank you for being here today. This was awesome.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
I love you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. Check out more show notes and information on each episode at mikeduppodcast.com, MIKED uppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.